So today I want to talk about this one book that I picked up while I was in Japan, and it was I had heard about it, but it was actually an incredible surprise, and I think it's the novel that every creative person with imposter syndrome should read. The book I want to talk about today is The Forest of Wool and Steel by Natsumi Yoshida, who is obviously a Japanese author born on Honshu Island. She is quite famous in Japan. She won a few prizes, but she is also a piano player. She has played piano her whole life, like it's quite common in some of these countries. And so in this book, she brings together sort of her experience as a writer, but also her experience with piano. And this book in particular has won the Japan Booksellers Award, which is a prize where all the booksellers in Japan kind of vote for the book that they are more eager to sell or they enjoy more hand selling. So before we go into the plot and all the lessons we can draw to battle imposter syndrome as a creative person, I just wanted to make one small introduction to the book and say that this is very much a character-driven book. That means that the plot is secondary. It comes after character development. I really like enjoying this type of books, but I understand that they can be slow for some people because the plot usually is not very dramatic, not so much happens, I guess, compared to other types of book that are more plot driven, so they could be a bit slow and maybe a bit boring, but I really like them, and so this is the first thing that I wanted to say. In this book specifically, we follow Tomura, which is the protagonist of the book, and he's an aspiring piano tuner. So a bit more about the plot now. This book is set in Hokkaido, which is the northernmost island in Japan, and it's famous for its mountains, its forests, hot springs, and in this Hokkaido island there is this mountainous village where Tomura is from. While he is in high school, he kind of stumbles on this piano tuner who's tuning this piano, and he's completely transfixed by the sound, by the tune, and it kind of brings him back to the forest surrounding his village. So throughout this whole book there is kind of the metaphor of listening to piano, like walking through a forest, and this imagery comes back more than once. So anyways, Tomura is completely transfixed by the work of this piano tuner and the sound of this piano, and so he decides that he himself wants to become a piano tuner, and through the whole book we kind of follow his journey pursuing this craft, and he ends up working for this piano tuning shop where he's mentored by 3 master piano tuners. And throughout this whole book, and this is what relates to me most as an aspiring writer, but I'm sure it will relate to a lot of different people who want to make art and want to make creative products, he battles the question, do I have what it takes? Even the kind of the chapters that in the book I will show it now here. They are an introduction to piano tuning, beginner's level at best, not quite intermediate, far from advanced, and a master class. So it's all about developing this craft. So when I was reading this book, and I see a lot of bookmarks, a lot of pages that are underlined in pencil, because it really spoke to me and some of the struggles that I go through with imposter syndrome, with fearing that I don't have what it takes, that I'm not good enough, and doubting my abilities. So there are 5 topics that I think we can draw from this book that I think would help us when we also struggle with a bit of self-doubt, self-criticism, imposter syndrome. So without further ado, the first is on ambition, especially ambition in setting goals. The scene is the following. Tomura has gone he's shadowing one of these masters, Mr. Aquino, while he is tuning the piano from in a client's house. And while they're talking, so Mr. Aquino is a bit curt, he's a bit not rude, but like he doesn't have great people skills, and also his approach to the craft, at least he makes it seem like it's just a job and not much more for him. So in this particular setting, Mr. Aquino tells Tomura that the client doesn't care if you're giving it your all or not. Coming up with a good sound, that's our one and only mission, and if a client feels that pronounced bass and treble sounds good, then there's nothing wrong with giving it to them. So he basically saying that you shouldn't really set your goals too high, you should simply try to satisfy the client, and if the client is satisfied, it doesn't really matter if that's the best you could do or not. So this is very much on ambitions in setting goals, and what Tomura says, this doesn't sit well with him, because he says, doesn't this mentality sort of crush possibility? The possibility of encountering a truly sublime sound, a sound that sends a shiver through your heart, as had happened to me back in the gym of the sixth form college. Sure, I might not be able to produce the sound myself, I was still a beginner, but if you don't make that your goal, you will never get there. What Tomura says here resonates very well with me, because I think it's important to have ambition when setting goals, and especially in these early stages, but the point is that this is an internal goal for him, so he wants to go back and be able to recreate the sound that moved him so much the first time he heard it. So he's not saying that he wants to become a very famous piano tuner who kind of follows the most famous piano player around the world and tunes their concert pianos. He's not saying this. So if we move this to writing, an external goal would be, I want to write a book that becomes a New York Times bestseller, or I want to write a book that sells millions and millions of copies, and obviously these are external goals that don't really mean much. But if you move it to an internal goal, that could be, I want to write the best book that I'm capable of, or I want to write the book that I would really love reading. And those are internal goals, and I think it's good to have such an ambitious goal setting when, again, it reflects something meaningful and not simply something mundane that is also a bit out of your control. So this was the first topic that I wanted to talk about on setting goals and kind of the ambition in setting goals. The second one is also very important for me, and I think for most of the people who are trying to be creatives, and that is the importance of resilience. So in this scene, a bit later in the book, Tomura has gone to tune a piano in a client's home, and it's not going very well. He's very disappointed, he's not getting there, and in the end the client kind of drops him. And one of his mentors, this is Mr. Yanagi, who has a different approach to the mentor we saw before, he tells him, your hard work isn't all wasted, Tomura. And at that, Tomura is taken a bit aback, because it's like, I never thought it was wasted. Like, even if I'm struggling, even if I'm not succeeding the way I would want to, I never thought the work I put into was wasted. So Mr. Yanagi is kind of surprised, and he tells him, you've never regretted or looked back on something and wondered if it might have been a wasted effort? I mean, you don't actually feel the concept of something being wasted? And here is where Tomura goes into this reflection about resilience and just showing up every day for your craft, and he uses again the forest metaphor. So he says, there's no shortcut through the forest. The only way forward is to keep honing your skills little by little. And of course he goes on saying that there are times, of course, that he wished that he were blessed with a miraculous pair of ears and miraculous fingers, and that couldn't those all of a sudden blossom for me one day. So he does wish to get to the finish line with a single bound, but he knows this is not realistic. He knows that he needs to keep working at it every day, little by little, and then no effort is wasted in this. So I think this is really strong, and it speaks about the importance of showing up every day, the importance of not losing your trust in the process, not getting demoralized by the small defeats, or the moments where you may not feel like you're getting there, the moments of self-doubt, but sort of to push through them and keep working, because in the end they will pay off. So I think this is a strong lesson for all of us, that it's important to remember in the days where we're feeling down, that even if we feel like we didn't have a good writing session, a good painting session, training didn't go very well, this simple fact of showing up and trying means that we are a little better at it than the day before. So linked very much to this, and the third topic is self-doubt. So of course Tomura may have this very mature approach to the effort and the work he puts in every day, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't feel demoralized, or that even worse, he doesn't feel anxious. Now, anxiety is something that I struggle with every day, and I think a lot of people do, especially a lot of creative people, and this obsession with kind of evaluating what we're doing and the progress and lack of progress, and kind of building up this thing in our head that we will never get there for a gazillion of reasons. So this is something that Tomura also has, and again it's Mr. Yanagi that kind of gives him a different perspective on this. He tells him, that's alright, if you're scared, it'll spur you on, and you'll work as hard as you can to polish your skills. Hold on to that fear a little longer. With so many things being thrown at you to absorb, it would be strange not to feel overwhelmed. He chuckled. Don't worry about it, Tomura. Mr. Yanagi is really telling him that he shouldn't be put off by being scared and being anxious, because when he's in training, when he's progressing, when he's learning, it's exactly the time to be scared, and that's fine, that's natural, and actually that's good, because it will propel him to try and improve day by day. For me it's important because it also reframes in a positive tone something that is considered a negative emotion, something like anxiety and fear, something that we are taught that we need to manage and control and fix and move past. In here, Mr. Yanagi is sort of telling him to embrace it, because actually it can be a positive thing. Sure, it's uncomfortable in the moment, but it's something that it's good that Tomura feels this way. It means that he's doing something important. It means he's doing something he's supposed to be doing. The fourth topic is on talent. Now, talent, I feel like for creative people is always sort of a sore spot. It's always something that we wish we had, that we see in other people, and that we think that because we feel like we don't have any talent in what we're doing, we have to make up for it with a lot of work. We often see talent in others when we don't know exactly the work that they put behind it. We only see the final product and we're like, wow. So recently I reread The Great Gatsby, which obviously is one of the classics. I was really taken aback again from the language that Fitzgerald uses. I found it to be so elaborate, and I'm like, I will never be able to write this way. And but then I guess I moved past the idea of talent, and I said, okay, but he wrote in a very different time to when I'm writing. Language is different, and also I don't know the amount of work that he put behind it to develop the final product. Linked to that, Tomura again showing a lot of wisdom for a boy his age. He says, I must not let the word talent distract me or use it as an excuse to give up. Experience, practice, effort, knowledge, a quick mind, perseverance and passion. If I didn't have enough talent, I could make up for it with all of this. Like, this to me is so powerful. I mean, it's exactly what I've been thinking, and I think what most people are thinking, because even who we think is talented, I really wonder if deep inside they think they're talented or they have the same self-doubt. If one day in the future they were no longer enough for what I needed, then I could give it all up. But the thought of this terrified me. It must be so frightening to admit finally that you don't have what it takes. And then again, Mr. Yanagi gives him this definition of talent that has really stuck with me, and it's, you see, talent will out if you really love something. A tenacity, a fight in you that keeps you in the fray no matter what. Something like that. That's the way I've come to think of it. Yes, powerful stuff. The final point that I wanted to go through is this perfection, the idea of perfection, the strive to reach perfection. And this brings us to full circle to the first topic that we were talking about, which was setting ambitious goals. And while that still stands, while we should set ambitious internal goals that make us want to better ourselves, it's also important to realize that perfection will never be achieved. And actually, this is again Mr. Aquino, the first guy we heard from, and he is quite practical, and he tells Tomura, if you can never decide when to call it quits, then at some point you go mad. And that's because pursue perfection, refuse to give up, and you're on the route to insanity. It's very accurate, and it kind of reminds me of that interview between Stephen King and Martin, where kind of Stephen King tells him, I write, at some point I stop writing and I publish. And I think this is really important because at some point we need to stop working on whatever project we're working. We need to say this is good enough and kind of move to the next phase. And so I think it's important to come to terms with the fact that we will probably never be 100% satisfied with what we produce. Whatever is there will always fall a bit short of what we had imagined at the start, but that's okay, because otherwise we will all go mad trying to pursue perfection. And it also reminds me of the 80-20 thing that a lot of these productivity gurus kind of tell you, that for the first 80% of the project is where you get highest return on investment, is where you make most progress, and then the last 20% is when you try to make it perfect, and that's when the return on investment really goes down, because you can put so much effort in it and barely move the needle. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I hope this video inspired you to read the book. First of all, it's a great read, it's a great companion, something you can read really in a few hours, but still there are so important quotes that will really stick with you, and then also that has given you a little of peace in your own creative journey to know that we are all struggling with it. And if you feel lonely in your creative process, if you feel overwhelmed, you can always read about Tomura, and he will keep you company and share the burden with you. Thanks again for watching, and see you soon. Ciao!